Welcome everyone. My name's Nick White. I've been asked to chair this evening's meeting as a considered neutral. I have no official dealings with the club other than as a very occasional spectator. I have experience as a Frome Town Councillor, but having stepped down some time ago, I have no ongoing commitments to the council. So I'm interested in all things Frome and wish to see the town thrives in all areas. So I, like you all, am extremely keen to see that the long term for the future of the football club is secure. There are a number of historical reasons for why the club is in its current predicament, but I propose that unless those reasons are pertinent to the way forward for the club, I'd like to leave them for tonight as history and fully concentrate on the future. I'd also like to ask you all that as we share in the same ambitions for the club, but are likely to differ in the best way forward, that we keep any differences civil and that proper courtesy is extended to all that are taking part this evening. We intend to make the evening as participatory as possible, and you'll be asked to contribute concerns, ideas and initiatives in the form of breakout tables. So every table will have a chart and notes and a facilitator from the council. So any ideas, suggestions or queries that you may have, please put them down. Those queries will be drawn together, any ideas, and the facilitator will come round and then put those questions to the participants tonight at the end of the evening.
Recording in progress.
All comments will be drawn together, recorded and will be published. Themes to be explored. What does the club need? How can we involve more people with the skills and experience needed? How can we bring more money into the club? And what opportunities do we have? Finally, consider if you can help or know anyone who can. There's also cards on all of the table for your own personal details and data. So if you would like to get involved and come forward to future meetings, because there's undoubtedly going to be future meetings, could you please record your personal details on those cards, and there's a box at the back, so if you could put your details in there, that would be great. Thank you. Anyway, before we get into this, we have a number of guest speakers who will give us information and food for thought before we all sit down in our groups. First, we have John Carver from Frome Town FC, who will outline the current situation, finances and ambitions. Then we have Mel Usher from Frome Town Council on why the council has become involved, how it can help, its ambitions for the club, and a joint approach to what the club needs. We also have a presentation later on from Andy Walsh from the Football Supporters Association on the role of the FSA, different types of ownership, what needs to be done next, and will provide examples of best practice. He's on a link from France, so we're hoping that holds up as he speaks a little bit later to us. And then finally, we will hear from John Bickley and Oliver Holtaway from Bath City Football Club on what they have done and learnt on their particular journey. We will then break for about 30 minutes for a facilitated table discussion. All the feedback will be recorded and any pertinent points from each table will be aired. Please avoid repetition of ideas raised. We will then have a brief summing up and a show of hands vote on the considered next steps. Then afterwards, please stay around for informal chats and drinks at the bar, because quite often over a beer or two, that's when things really get decided. Anyway, thank you very much. First speaker that we have now is obviously John Carver, and I'd like to welcome him to the stage.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for all coming. It's lovely to see how many people, lovely to see so many people here, and I look forward to seeing you all here again tomorrow night, 7:45, Somerset Cup, Wellington Town, reduced rates of £7, and it'll be a marvellous attendance if you can all come tomorrow as well. I'd like to thank the council, both officials and councillors, for all the work they've done to help facilitate this event, and the work they're going to do when we do the breakout sessions at the various tables. I'm only going to speak for a very short period of time. I've actually got somebody to tell me when to shut up, which is a good idea. But I did want to just briefly say why fundamentally we are here tonight and what we want to achieve out of this complete process. At the moment, the way that the football club is structured, I use the football club in its sort of widest terminology, is under effectively now a two-company structure. It was a three-company structure, but it's in real terms now a two-company structure. One company owns the football ground. The other company, which is Frome Town AFC Limited, for want of a better word, owns the players. That's the very clear distinction between the two. The company that owns the football ground effectively has what is known in common parlance as the golden share. So we have one share that is held by Frome Town Holdings Limited. Although from an operational perspective, we work fairly independently. What is absolutely clear is that there were very good reasons to set up that structure, but as things have evolved, those reasons really don't any longer stand good. They don't help us to develop a community-based football club, which is certainly one of our driving ambitions, and they don't help us to raise capital. And I'll come back to that quite shortly. So we're here basically from our perspective, and we want to hear everyone's perspective, for two purposes: increase community ownership and give us the mechanisms by which we can raise capital to do the things we want to do. What I would like to say is that this is a real working partnership. There's been a massive amount of effort and time and commitment from Frome Town Council since they effectively signed a deal with us, which got us out of a tricky financial situation with, as you know, has been publicly said, an option to buy the ground for £1 should they exercise it. But it's clearly, it's not just that. It's a working partnership, and it's already starting to bear fruit, as we can see from this evening. This event is not just about our loyal supporters. I know there's a lot of you in here tonight, but it's also about a step in engaging with the wider community, even those that might not actually be all that interested in football. But for that to work, we need everyone's thoughts tonight. And as I said, nothing is off the table. We in the council have a commitment to be as open and transparent as we progress this process through the various iterations. Nick did mention financial situation, and let's be blunt about this. At our level of football, we live on a financial knife edge. There are very few clubs at this step who don't. Unless you happen to be the plaything of a very successful second-hand car salesman, then you're in difficulty financially, and we are no exception. And we know that things are going to get harder. We have to pay for floodlights. We have to pay for electricity and engineers. We have to even heat the water for the showers for players. Everything is going to cost us a lot more. So we are going to need more and more revenue from sponsorship and from gate income, because they are basically our two main avenues of funding. So if those go down, then so does our ability to survive. But I want to make it clear to this meeting, and to a certain extent to comment upon comments I've seen in the media, we are a club that works to a managed budget. We know exactly how much money we have. We know exactly where that money has to go. We have debts, but those debts are being managed. And that's the important thing. I suspect there are very few people sat in this room who do not have debts. But I also suspect that the vast majority of you manage those debts, and that's exactly what we do. Yes, we have a debt to HMRC, but that debt is managed with an arrangement with them. As long as we stick to our side of it, that will carry on as it is. Just like your credit cards, you pay them off each month, however much you can afford. And we are no different. I know everybody loves this ground, but let's be honest about it. There are lots of aspects of it that look tired. Some of it needs to be refurbished. Some of it, quite frankly, is better off being knocked down and rebuilt. That requires us to have capital. The only way we can get capital expenditure in the current situation is through thinking of developing a more community-based scheme with more wider share ownership, within the Frome Town community. And again, reiterate, that is one of the reasons why we're here. We need to look at how we improve the infrastructure. We have excellent work from our volunteers, and we could always do with more volunteers. Anybody that fancies come along are more than welcome. What we need to do is look at how we broaden what we offer to the wider Frome community. Yes, we need to integrate the various successful footballing strands, the Frome Town United, the women's, the accessible football, football, all those things, we can join up better. We know that. But what we also want to join up are the other people in Frome that perhaps football is not their number one interest. We want to widen it through greater sports coverage. So one of the things we want to look for, and it's not pie in the sky, we want to look for 3G. We want to look for possibly a multi-use games area. Things that will benefit the wider community, not just those that kick a football around. There are lots of options, but what I want to make it clear is that we as a football club have not been standing still. And most of you will know that we now have a new tenant in the clubhouse who's already started to kickstart this venue again. And let's not forget, this is the second largest venue in Frome outside the Cheese and Grain. Its potential to be a thriving part of this community is almost limitless. And that's something else that we, as directors of this football club, in close collaboration with the tenants, want to see develop. As Nick said, we have been engaging with the experts on community restructuring. We've already had a very, very interesting meeting with Andy Walsh. He's going to be extremely good value for money. And he's going to give you a lot of thought-provoking ideas. And I just want to end on that point by thanking Jeff Norris and colleagues who really did start to kickstart the engagement of the SFA and have certainly driven that aspect of this particular project. That's all I would like to say, Nick. Thank you very much, Ma'am. And I would now hand back to him to introduce the next speaker.
I'll obviously introduce myself. Thanks, John. My name is Melisha, and I'm the project councillor from Frome Town Council for this particular project. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody at the beginning. Thanks to all those volunteers, all those people who've been involved with the club over the years. The number of hours, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours that those people have put in. Some of them have had very sleepless nights over the last few months, and I think it's credit to them that they've stayed the course. So what I'm going to say tonight is not a criticism of those people. Yes, there have been some missteps and some mistakes along the way, and it's hardly surprising. It's not unique. We all know football clubs, large and small, up and down the country, most of whom, as John said, lie somewhere between financially broke and bankrupt. And there are not many people, not many football clubs that lie outside of that. So tonight, though, we need a relentless focus on the future. There's no point in going back over who did what to whom, when and how, because that's not going to get us anywhere. So it's about new beginnings and finding a new route for Frome Town Football Club. So, quite rightly, some of you will be saying, well, why is the council involved in this? What have they got to do with football clubs? And it's quite a good question, that. Where councils have become involved in the past, it hasn't always worked out successful. So a few months ago, we got an urgent request from the club to hold a meeting primarily about their finances. And when we sat down and we worked it through, the level of debt that needed repaying, and that doesn't count the ones that John has referred to the income tax people, the level of debt was £350,000. And no payments of interest had been made for months. and the debt was increasing by £5,000 a month. These were legitimate debts, and they'd been accumulated primarily by a solicitor's firm in Cornwall, who quite understandably, I guess, wanted their money back sometime in the not too distant future. They knew the law, they knew the value of this piece of land almost in the centre of Frome, and they wouldn't negotiate any further. They were a real threat. This was not a pretend threat. These people were quite prepared to go to High Court, get a court order, turn up at the ground just before the beginning of the new season, padlock the gates, and that could potentially have been the end of the club already. So that was not something that was going to go away. Could actually have sold the debt to a new developer who might not have been quite as philanthropic as the council, who then moved it on in terms of ownership. So what is the deal? Well, the council paid off those debts of 350,000, and we've virtually run through all of our capital reserves as a result of that. We have a first charge on the ground, which means that nobody else can buy it at this stage. And as John also said, we have an option to buy the ground, not the football club, for £1 sometime within the next 10 months. And I think we probably will do that. We did that on the basis that the club becomes more community focused sometime in the future, and perhaps community owned if we can go down that route successfully. And I wanted to say how significant a football club is to a local community. Just think of the span of engagement. The people in this room, from young to old, from those people who are rich to poor, from those people who live in the town and those people who live in adjoining villages. If you think about the significance of sport and fitness and health, then the football club has got a major part to play in that. If you think of the community, people in this room coming together for a single focus, and actually it's something a little bit more intangible than that. It's the loss of the identity of the town if it hasn't got a football club. It's like John Lewis leaving Liverpool, for example, or the last bank closing in one of the surrounding villages. It's as significant as that. What do we bring to the table? Well, we do not want to run a football club. That is for certain. We wouldn't be very good at running a football club. We haven't got the skills and experience. This is not a takeover. This is a partnership. And for us, we were going to have this perhaps high level of involvement during an interim period, and something else emerges. So we've removed the immediate threat. Our arrival has allowed a fresh slate. We've had no involvement in previous disagreements or misunderstandings or mistakes that people might have made. We've actually proved that for once, council can move quite fast because we did it in a few weeks. It's admirable in itself, to be honest. We've worked with the club on the strengths, weakness, opportunities and threat analysis. We've done a financial review with them. We've helped to determine a new vision. We've helped put business planning in place. We've brought Bordeaux consultants to the table. We've included a development brief. We've brought forward these community ownership proposals. And actually, we have a good record in applying for grants. And there are a lot of grants available for football clubs from the Premiership down. But no more money. Whether it's revenue or capital, there is no more money coming from the council. And that's a really important point to make. I think some people might be feeling, well, as a council involved, they've got very deep pockets, they'll save this football club. We won't. And actually, we will not be left with a white elephant either. So we might remove the immediate threat, but if these proposals go downhill, then perhaps we'll have to start looking at other ways of getting our investment back. So something's got to change. Otherwise, we'll be back where we started fairly quickly. Our joint ambition with the club is for a successful club, for a community engaged club, for the club to become a community resource, and for a club that's on a firm financial footing. You might say, well, that's pie in the sky. How's that going to happen? Well, there are over 40 community or supporter-owned clubs already in the country, some large, some small. So this is not a new concept, and the FSA will give a lot of help and have already proved to be great in terms of giving us confidence about the future. So there are many models that could be adopted from here on in. Oh, tonight is the night for people to be able to put their names forward and to get engaged, particularly on these tables. And for all of those people who moaned over the years, and I've probably been one of them, about nothing happening at the football club and the way they run it, this is the chance to put your mouth, or your money where your mouth is. And I would hope that a lot of you will take that up. So do not leave this room without actually making sure that you've left your email address or telephone number. And if you can't find, then there are cards on the table, and if they've been used up, then Rachel, who will stand up in a second, just see her and she'll get your name and address. Okay, that's enough from me. We'll hand over to Andy Walsh for that. Thank you.
Good evening. Just a quick a quick question to the technical support. Are you showing my my presentation from your end, or do you want me to share?
Can Andy share it, please?
Okay. 1 second. Okay, I take it everybody can now see that that presentation. Again, good evening everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I live up to the billing that Mel and John has already given me. But I just want to start off by introducing myself and introducing our organisation and what we do, going through what I'm going to tell you this evening. And then hopefully, if there are any questions, there are people in the room who can answer the question. So my name's Andy Walsh. I'm the head of the National Game and Community Ownership of the Football Supporters Association. We've been speaking to the council and people at the club, the directors of the club, for a couple of months now about the situation they're in. And I just want to thank everybody for their attention and the way that they've welcomed the ideas that we've brought to them. This evening's presentation from me is going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. I'm going to go through the community ownership model, and as Mel has already indicated, there are a number of clubs which are already using our ownership model, and I'll give you a little bit of a background on that as well. So, Football Supporters Association, who are we? Well, we're Europe's largest democratic supporters organisation. We've got over 500,000 members across England and Wales. There are sister organisations in Scotland, in the island, and elsewhere in Europe. And in the time that we've been operating, we've established in excess of 50 community-owned clubs, working on different models. And when we talk about a community-owned club, we talk about a club that's wholly owned, or where its equity is majority owned by its community and by its supporters. We've got supporters we represent supporters, I should say, across the whole of the men's and women's game. In the men's game, that's from the Premier League right the way down to the grassroots. And I myself look after everything outside of the professional game. In the women's game, we have a network of women's supporter groups across the whole of the women's game, from the WSL again down into the grassroots of women's football. As an organisation, we were a major contributor to the fan-led review. Tracy Crouch's report was published at the end of last year and is now slated ready for legislation when the government finds time for legislation to be put before Parliament. As an organisation, in terms of our involvement with football, we've got representatives on the FA Council, which is the national governing body for the FA in England, and we hold regular meetings with the leagues, professional leagues, and in semi-pro football as well, and the governing bodies both in England and in Wales. In Parliament, we lobby MPs, and we have our own all-parliamentary party group, and we're involved in making representation and presentations to other APPGs in Parliament. And at the moment, we're talking to the Pro Party, APPG, and we're also talking to representatives from other APPGs, including in the finance sector. So community-owned clubs, what are they and how many are there? There are currently 45 community-owned clubs across England and Wales, and there are similar models which we've helped pioneer in Scotland and in Ireland. There are dozens more clubs where supporters and the community own an equity stake in those clubs. The makeup of those 45, there's 3 of them in the English Football League: AFC Wimbledon, Exeter City and Newport County. In the English non-league pyramid, there are a further 40 clubs, and there are 2 clubs in the Welsh leagues. Several former league clubs who crashed through financial problems themselves have been resurrected using the community-owned model. Those include Chester FC, Scarborough Athletic, AFC Worcester Diamonds, and most recently, Bury AFC. All of those clubs I've mentioned use a model called Community Benefit Society. Now, Community Benefit Society is a 19th century piece of legislation, and all of the community benefit societies are established under an updated version of that legislation called the Cooperative and Community Benefit Society Act 2014. A society, a community benefit society, is a member-owned organisation. It's incorporated, which means it's a limited company. It's registered with the Financial Conduct Authority as well as Companies House, and its activities is democratically controlled by its members. So instead of buying a share in the company, as you would do in a company limited by shares, you obtain a membership, and every member gets one vote. No matter how much money that person puts in, it's one member, one vote. The FSA rules for community benefit societies are registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. We have a set of model rules which we've discussed with colleagues at the football club and at the council. And these rules are already pre-approved by the Financial Conduct Authority, which makes the establishment of a new community benefit society for Frome Town a lot more straightforward. There's 5 key pillars to our model rules, and usefully, Mel's already gone through a number of these as the ambition for the council, so you can see the seamless fit that we have with the council's ambition and also the football club's ambition. It's got to be sustainable. No point keep pouring good money after bad. Our model allows for mutual ownership at one member, one vote structure that I've talked about before. The focus is on the community benefit. That's why we use a community benefit society. Legally, the directors are responsible for delivering a model of ownership and a business model which is going to enhance the cultural, social and economic value of the club in the town in which that club is located. And that means providing facilities, using the fantastic facilities that are already at Badges Hill, and looking at how those facilities can be enhanced and used for the wider community. And of course, it wouldn't be a football club if we didn't have football ambition and wanting to play at the highest level possible that a sustainable business model would allow. Currently, Frome Town, as John's already outlined, is constituted as a company limited by shares and is owned by a company limited by guarantee. That's the holdings company. There have been the financial problems. That council intervention has already been gone through. But what we need now is a community-wide response. This model will not work if you just leave it to half a dozen people. In fact, I go further than that. If there's only half a dozen people put their hands up out of this meeting tonight, then we will simply say to you, it ain't going to work. This needs a team of people coming together. People who are involved in the club now, people who've been involved in the club in the past, people in the town who've looked at the club and thought, something I'm interested in, people who've had nothing at all to do with football, but do have a philosophy and a belief that what goes on in the town is important. The identity that Mel talked about before, talking about the benefit that a club, that a thriving community football club can bring to the whole town. One of the things I often say when talking to people for the first time about community ownership, you look at a club and its first team may play 20 to 30 games a season in the ground. You may have second teams, it may have a winners team, it may have other teams, but the majority of the time, most clubs, they will only use the facility for football for a couple of months of the year, 50 or 60 times in a year. What are you going to do the other 10 months of the year? It's about developing the facility with the eye to making sure it's there for the whole of the town. Frome, as a town, has to decide if it wants a football club, and if it does, what kind of football club does it want? And I'm a very firm believer, and the Football Support Association is a very firm believer, that a club that's constituted as a community benefit society for the whole of the community is stronger and is better, not just for football, but for the whole of the community living within the town. Current structure, I'm not going to labour on this because John's already gone through it, but that's how the current structure stacks up. The proposal will be for a simplified structure where Frome Town Community Limited, which will be the Community Benefit Society, owns the football club. The community will set up a new Community Benefit Society. The football club ownership needs to be transferred from holdings to that new Community Benefit Society. The council and the members of that Community Benefit Society will then develop a vision for the ground and for the club, which will include those community partnerships that colleagues have talked about already this evening. What the community want from the facility, what can be developed, how it can be developed, a time frame for that development. Everybody being involved in that, not just the football club, is absolutely vital to the success of this project. And what funding opportunities there are, as well as the grant funding opportunities that Mel has outlined, that the council can assist the club in partnership to access. There are funding opportunities and funding vehicles that are unique to community benefit societies. One, the most powerful one of which is community shares. Personally, I've been involved in raising millions of pounds for football clubs over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, where clubs who previously were strapped for cash have been able to tap into a community share offer to allow the development, the capital development that John Carver has already outlined that the club and the ground itself needs. One of the beauties of community shares is it also brings tax benefits. The details of how a community share offer can be developed, we can talk about at a future date, and the Football Supporters Association has access to consultants that we'll be able to assist the club and the council in using to develop a community shares offer. That's it from me. I'm happy to take any direct questions there may be. I know there might be restrictions on time, but I'm quite happy to field any questions if there are any immediate questions about the technical issues. Thank you.
Andy, thanks very much. We're going to go to the breakout tables after our next speakers, and a lot of the issues that are going to be raised will have an opportunity to be put forward by the facilitators on each table to maybe ask you some questions that are pertinent. And Andy, if you could bear with us and stay until that happens, that'll hopefully be in about another 40-45 minutes time. So if you want to go and grab a coffee or something or other, and then come back and join us, because I'm sure there will be questions that will want to be put to you for your advice and knowledge. Is that okay?
That's smashing. Thank you, Nick.
Okay. Thank you. Finally, we're really lucky to have two people here from Bath City Football Club who have been down this road, or certainly a similar road. We've got John Bickley and Oliver Holtaway, and they're going to come and speak about what they've done and learnt on their journey. So if I could first introduce you to Oliver. Thank you. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting us down today. I think it's a really exciting opportunity that you're facing, and happy to tell you a little bit about the story that we've had at Bath City. We'll be around a bit afterwards as well if you want to ask more detailed questions. I'm sure we'll be at the bar. Bath City Football Club, the National League South Club. We've now been community owned for 5 years, and we basically chose that route because we were facing 3 major problems. The first was we had debts that were mounting, and the directors at the time who had been putting, lending money into the club to keep it going, had indicated they were no longer willing to do so or able to do so. So we had to find a way to recapitalize the club. So that was a pressing issue. But beyond that, there were underlying issues around the fact that really there were only a handful of volunteers, the main shareholders of the club, who were doing everything, keeping the lights on, making sure the VAT was paid, the players were signed. And they didn't really have the bandwidth, and probably I think they would admit the skill set between them, to really kind of transform the club and help it kick on to the next level. And I think particularly the club had quite a low profile within the city. I mean, as you know, Bath is dominated historically by the rugby club. Bath City Football Club is down in Twerton in the western part of the city. So we sort of struggled from that low profile. So the club was kind of going along all right, ticking along, but the debt was mounting. So something had to be done. So an opportunity arose in around 2014 for us to pursue a community ownership option. The existing owners sort of demonstrated their willingness to consider that and gave us a chance as the supporters to raise enough money to try to buy a majority stake. So the opportunity there was, as I say, to recapitalize the club, to kind of pay off some of the debt, put us in a sounder financial footing, but also to give everyone who was a supporter or a member of the club a real stake and a real say in what was going on. The club was already owned by supporters in the sense that the major shareholders, they weren't sort of, nefarious, sugar daddies. They were people who really cared about the club. But yeah, as I say, they were limited in terms of the bandwidth and the time they had to really develop the club. By moving to an ownership structure where everyone has a real stake on a kind of one member, one vote basis, where your talent and your passion and your readiness to get involved is as important as the money that you're putting in. That seemed very attractive for us in terms of building a more sustainable kind of future for the club. As Andy says, Andy mentioned community shares. We use those community shares to raise the money we needed. We had 2 goes at it. So the first go, we tried to buy the whole club at once, £750,000. We weren't successful in that, but we did raise about 300, and that gave us enough confidence, and gave the owners enough confidence as well to give us another go. So in 2016, we were able to raise £365,000 in community shares. So about 600 people put their hands in their pocket and bought community shares in the supporters trust, and that allowed the supporters to take a majority stake in the club. So we now have I think about 54% of the club. We appoint 6 of the 9 directors of the club, including the chair, and all supporters have that sort of transparent, democratic opportunity to take part in decisions, go to AGMs, and generally take part in the affairs of the club. And I think, John will talk more about this, but it's really transformed the profile of the club in Bath. We've attracted lots and lots more volunteers, much wider skill set. Our attendances have gone up massively, way beyond our expectations when we first did the takeover. Our community benefit has really expanded. We're doing more things with the local community, making more use of our ground and using football more as a platform, kind of doing some good in the town of Bath. And I think it's safe to say it's really changed the perception of the football club throughout the town, throughout the community. Much higher kind of just general awareness for a start, but also I think that story of us being community owned, community engaged, community facing has really been, it struck a chord with advertisers and sponsors. I think it's safe to say, and we've brought in more and different types of sponsorship off the back of that. Including launching a women's team this season, which was mostly funded by the ones that made a sponsor. And as I say, supporters have a much more kind of transparent say in the decisions we make. So decisions around how we redevelop the ground, decisions around introducing 3G pitch or not. It's really sort of energized, I think, the supporter base as well. But yeah, it's something I think Frome Town should definitely consider very carefully. I think the basic, the type of town Frome is, I think, could really support a really vibrant and really well supported community-owned club. In terms of the learnings I would briefly share with you, I suppose over the course of doing 2 share issues, we realised there's a real benefit in having a quite quite a lean organizational team. You need a lot of people to help you out, but you need to make sure that you sort of structure your team very well as you go through this process. And perhaps we were a bit over ambitious in our initial target, trying to go for almost £1 million to buy the whole club. So it's finding be realistic about what you can achieve. But in doing so, I think having the FSA and Andy Walsh and everyone in that organisation behind you will make a huge difference. I think what Andy doesn't know about community ownership isn't worth knowing. And the FSA were wonderful for us the whole way through. So you will have support from them, and you have support from us at Bath City. We found throughout when we were doing the campaign, we were hugely supported by other clubs who had done the same journey. I think you will find that kind of network, and that you'll be able to call upon those examples and get help from other clubs. So yeah, we will definitely be yeah, at your service. Yeah, best of luck with it. I'll hand over to my colleague John Bickley now, who will tell you a bit more about some of the things that have been achieved at Bath City over those 5 years.
Thanks, Oliver. Nick mentioned about people having a drink and things getting done at bars. I'd like to point to Oliver and Jamie Malley, who dragged me to the Royal Oak and then to the Mint Rooms and got me deeply involved in Bath City after when I was sort of 2 sheets to the wind, or whatever the phrase might be. So just careful, but actually the truth is it's one of the best things I've ever done. So I was part of the bid, the big Bath City bid that raised the money to do the initial approach, and then got it over the line another sort of 12 months later. And then since then I've been on the board as the marketing director. Interestingly, principally at the start, one of the big objectives we had was to try and get use of the facilities on a much higher level, and I dragged Jamie and Paul to an 80s night in Twerton, and we never really got off the ground. But I think the 2 main things that we did which transformed the club were treating ourselves as landlords. So we have tenants that are Curo, the social housing in Bath. We buy any car. If you want to sell your car in Bath, come to Twerton. And a number of others, including more sort of community-focused ones, such as Forget Me Not, which is a dementia charity. So we went from trying to be a sort of entertainment venue. None of us were entertainment venue runners, but also it's a sort of, it's not an easy sell, Twerton. And, you know, probably a few more choices in Bath at the moment. So we tried and failed, to be frank. Couldn't put on the dart. I've been to lots of events here and we couldn't match it. So we learned on the job. But that's what I wouldn't do next time. But we have paying commercial tenants. Another great one is Roman Boxing Gym. So we had CrossFit in for a while, which was lovely, but a bit middle class, and you know, people came in and then went away again. But the boxing gym is really sort of grassroots, you know, classic stuff of what boxing clubs can do for local communities. So I'm quite proud of what we do there. We've got sort of a mixture of high paying and low paying, but you know, it's a good sort of range of benefit for the community. And then the other thing is that we dramatically enhanced crowds. And I think the reason for that is because when we started off, we were just sort of doing more of the same. We were putting posters up, and we were putting posters up more consistently. We were sort of talking, getting the message around. But the big thing I would advise everyone to do is just to talk to everyone and make everyone welcome to the club. So the trigger for us, I think, getting the bigger crowds was a guy called Simon McTaggart got involved. He was bringing his kid along, and he just happened to have done marketing campaigns for Man United and Nike in the past. And because we're community owned, he was willing to do creative for us for free. So he came up with an ad concept, brought it to the board, pitched it, and we thought, that's amazing. And then we were able to get another sort of friend who's a professional photographer, charges a fortune, doesn't charge us a penny. And it's because it's community owned. I work probably 2 days a week for the club. I wouldn't have lifted a finger for the previous organisation because it's a private company. Why would I give my time freely to a private company? Now, I know that that's different and people do that, but that would have been a sort of red line for me. So just being community owned opens doors. Having conversations enables you to meet people who that they may never have sort of, they may sort of have things in their mind, but just tease it out. Carol, who's our general manager, just welcomes everyone with the equal amount of passion, and it's frustrating sometimes. We're thinking we need to get this turnstile open, and she's off meeting a groundhopper. But she is the one who brought us Simon McTaggart, someone who she introduced me to the other day, saying, I'm going to give up my job and work for Bath City. I was like, okay, steady on, yeah, just but it is that welcome. I think that you need to be open-minded. The other thing I'd say actually as well is you don't know where money's going to come from as well. There's the core of the fans who are going to support you through thick and thin. There's people who will never cross the threshold and may never cross the threshold who can put money into this enterprise. When we failed to do it the first time around, we got offers. We did a survey by email saying, yeah, how can you help? And I got this strange one saying, I can help with quite a lot of money. And I spoke to someone, what is this real? You know, and they said, well, you just got to talk to them. Yeah. And what I'd also do is talk to professional fundraisers, because we went into it, you know, Oliver said fairly naively, and you know, it's not necessarily all going to come from everyone here putting in £500 or whatever. Yeah, there's going to be people that put in tens, hundreds, or whatever, or thousands to make this happen. So approach it with a sort of broad mind and definitely an expansive mind. Yeah, I think maybe a third of the people who put money in weren't football fans or weren't Barcelona fans, that's for sure. So yeah, just be broad-minded. Oliver said don't be ambitious. I think probably do be ambitious. I think we could have perhaps done more. And I think, yeah, when the time comes, we could probably do more. The other thing I'd like to say, just, you know, I sort of shied away from the response, you know, the fans being the ones who got it over the line. That's not true. And what the big thing I think that we've seen over the last 2 years with COVID is that twice our supporters have just got us through. So the first time round we were in the playoffs, we needed, I think, £30,000 in order to get our players back to do the playoffs. And we raised that money in less than 24 hours and then went on to raise something like 54,000. And sadly we got knocked out, but we had a nice nest egg for the next season. So, and then following year when it all went wrong again, and we actually got fined by the league for for refusing to play when we couldn't pay our wages, when we would have broken rules by taking on that new debt. But we got fined by the league. We also had a lot of work to do with the club to get it back in order, you know, in terms of floodlighting and things like that. And again, the fans all surrendered. Most fans surrendered their season tickets, which was about 30,000, and then another 25,000 came in from supporters. So I think community ownership embedded that emotional relationship with fans and made them take responsibility. Directors we used to get to January, I think, and the directors would look around the table saying the cash is running out, 20 grand each. And that's how we got into debt. And this time, in the most testing of circumstances, the last 2 years, we came out slightly better financially than when we went into it. So I highly recommend it. Like I say, it's a big deal, but it's one of the proudest things I've ever done.
Well, thank you, Oliver and John, for your encouraging words there and some inspirational ideas. Hopefully we can follow through on those. Right, we've got to that point in the evening now where it's your turn to get involved. On your tables will be a facilitator, either an officer or a member from Frome Town Council, who will make themselves known to you if they haven't already. And we want you to pursue some of the ideas and things that I discussed a bit earlier. In fact, the questions we want really answered are on your tables, and your facilitators will steer you in those directions. But obviously, we've heard from Andy this evening that if there's any specific questions we want to ask him whilst we have him available, maybe those could be raised with your facilitator as well. We can take one or two pertinent questions that maybe we can address to Andy a little bit later as well. But so it's now over to you and time to get involved. Thank you.
We are just going to take some feedback from some of the tables. Thank you very much, everyone. Just so that you know who I am, I'm Lisa Merriweather-Millard. I'm one of the councillors with Frome Town Council. And I've been going around listening to the conversation that's been happening. And it sounds really positive, and it sounds like everybody's on board. We're going to take a little bit of feedback from the tables, and then I think there's a few questions for Andy Walsh as well. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time to take feedback from all the tables, which is why there's post-it notes and also notes being taken on the paper. So if you have something burning to say that you haven't had a chance to say, please do get it down. We will collate all of the feedback and make sure that that gets disseminated to everybody here and everybody who's interested in the future of the football club. Just for some feedback, Laura, is it okay if we ask for some feedback from your table? And I'll just do a roving mic here.
So I think the biggest thing that we were speaking about on our table was about gaining opportunities to link with the youth teams particularly. Currently, there doesn't seem to be much link between the youth teams. They seem to have merged recently, and there seems to be a way of getting stronger connections with the youth teams that would be mutually beneficial for the club and those that are coming up, and maybe might then have stronger links with the club in the future, might volunteer, might get involved. And that kind of thing, and so potentially bringing in more skills, more experience, and then eventually more money.
Okay, thank you to this table. Can we get some feedback? I feel like I'm on a talk show here. Some feedback from this table, please.
Thank you. We had a lot of questions about the background to this transaction. I know you mentioned at the beginning that you didn't want to dwell on that, but I think there's a lot of unanswered questions here from the general public, of which we have quite a lot written on our sheet. I don't know whether you want me to speak about them now or whether you want to see the sheet later.
Summarise.
Yeah.
Okay. More financial transparency, I think, is needed before anyone's going to invest any money into this. Second question, was any independent financial due diligence done before the council invested taxpayers' money into this? You mentioned that the loan you've given is 350,000, but we believe that the debt was actually more than that, 377,000. And at Company's House, there's two charges registered, one with an organisation called Gold Chevron, which I believe is the company in Cornwall you mentioned. There's also money to an organisation called Social Money Limited. This Gold Chevron debt is still outstanding according to Company's House, which we think is 250,000. Well, couple more, yeah, okay. If the Community Benefit Society goes ahead, who will own the ground after that happens? If the council buy the ground for £1, is this a transaction at undervalue? Because the balance sheet value of the ground is 1.7 million. Do you want me to continue? Okay, well, that was all the financial questions, but if we want something other than that, I think that there should be much more emphasis on playing local players at Frome Town and a proper pathway for players to move up into this club. If it's going to be a community club, we actually want members of the Frome community to be playing for Frome Town, and that might enhance the gate.
Thank you very much for that. So what I'm hearing is that there are still some questions that are unanswered for people, and a little bit more transparency about the situation financially and how that's come to be, and more transparency going forward, along with supporting local players, developing the youth program here. Does that summarize it? Okay. Can I go to another table, maybe one that's over here? Thank you for those comments. Over here.
So let's make this up as we go along. I think our first reaction on this table is, whoa, these are big amounts of money. It's really quite scary. Picking up from the point that was made just now, more transparency, more help. How did we get, what's the backstory here? I think would be really helpful for everyone to know. Really important to look forward, but also we need to know where we come from. Some really, really exciting ideas, I think, about looking forward. I think there was a, how did
consensus around the room that actually the community-owned approach would be really good. However, timing is really difficult at the moment. Everyone is cash poor. It's the worst possible time to be asking for more people to put money in their pockets. So there's kind of a reality check there about sort of making sure we set our sights realistically and ambitiously as opposed to too far ahead. And generally there was a real expectation and hope that getting across the community, looking for a broad interest group is really the way to go. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, so more support for a potential community, the football club being a community asset, but also some concerns about how we've got there that still need to be explored. Okay, one more group for feedback. I'm going to go over here because there seems to be a lot of women on this table, and it'd be good to hear from women as well.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. We had neighbours of the football club in our group, and also members of the women's team and people from community groups. So there was a lot of excitement and energy about what they had tonight. There were some, we basically plowed through the questions, and we've got lots of exciting answers about what the club might need. All sorts of things, of course, from bingos, crash down to, you know, need for improved marketing for events. We've got ideas about how to get more people through the doors, particularly around the women's game as well. So we've got lots of really good, exciting ideas here, but basically from this table a lot of positivity, but also the members of the community really delighted to be invited to the meeting tonight and to be part of it, and hope to be able to continue to be part of the community of football club.
Excellent, thank you. I think that that's it. Thank you to everyone's contributions and lovely contributions here too. As we said before, we don't have enough time to get feedback from all the tables at this point, but all of that information will be collected and shared back through. So thank you everybody for the contribution to that. I'm going to hand back over to Nick. Thank you again, and thank you to our hosts as well, Scott and Georgie.
Actually, I'm sure there are going to be some questions from the floor, and whilst we've got Andy with us to answer those questions, has anybody got anything they'd like to put to Andy that they think's urgent and pressing to the situation that faces us here at Frome Football Club? Put your hand up if you, yep, thank you.
Hi, yeah, my question was, how can supporters be members who haven't got any money to put in? Really, can I join for £1 and be a member?
Okay, so the straight answer to that question is that the committee of your community benefit society sets the membership fee. It has to be a minimum of £1. We would recommend it's a meaningful sum, but it needs to be accessible to the widest possible members of the community, and we can obviously offer additional advice on that, drawing on experience from elsewhere. But it has to be a minimum of £1 and it should be accessible. We would oppose it if it wasn't accessible. So if somebody said it has to be £1,000 because we needed as much money being raised, then that's not something that that would fit the community benefit model.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody else? Just check. Right.
I know from a lot of fans, including myself, what I know I'm concerned about is like, how do we know this will definitely help the long-term future of the club, like instead of just the short term?
Andy, I don't know if that one's for you.
Well, I'm happy to take it. That's down to you. The long-term future of the football club is in the hands of the community and of the supporters. If you leave it to a small group of people who are directors of the football club, that's not a sustainable future. Those directors then have to find people to replace them. And if we have the fans and the community involved in the community benefit society, that offers a much more sustainable path.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else in the room? Yep, right at the back there. I'll come with you. Like a game show host here.
Can organisations have a share or just individuals? Like if one of the people I work for, companies I work for is Purple Elephant, which is a charity, has a lot to do with disadvantaged families and children. Could the organisation be part of it, or would it have to be me as an individual?
No, organisations, whether they be incorporated, unincorporated, charitable or for-profit organisations, so long as they sign up to the objects of the company for being for the benefit of the community and what other objects the members decide that need to be in the constitution, then organisations can join as members of the Community Benefit Society. They only get one vote, but they can be members of the society.
Are there any examples of where this has failed? Why did it fail, and what lessons can we sort of learn from that?
So there's been examples where members have decided not to continue with the model. Failure is a subjective matter in terms of have clubs become unsustainable through being the Community Benefit Society model? No. The supporters have decided that they may wish to sell on to another party. So in the most recent example, Frome Football Club, the members of that supporters society decided to sell the football club to McElney and Reynolds. Similarly at Portsmouth, supporters at that club decided to sell to Mike Eisner, who was former executive at Disney. But the members took that positive decision. It was in their hands. It wasn't in the hands of one or two directors or a handful of shareholders. There have been situations in the past where I would say that Community Benefit Society has bitten off more than it can chew. As Oliver's outlined in his presentation, we're all more aware of these issues now. And one of the things that I've said to people from the council and from the football club is that we will put our resources at your disposal to ensure this is the right deal for the football club and the right deal for the town. We won't allow you just to go ahead with an unsustainable plan. And as this model has been worked out over the last 20 years, we've got a great deal of experience now about what works and what doesn't work.
Lovely, thanks, Andy. Is it time for maybe one last quick question to Andy before we wrap up? Yep, okay, thank you.
Hi, Andy. Just on the benefit scheme in terms of the amount of money needed for a membership, members of the public, yeah, you're saying minimum of £1, but if I was a corporate and I was prepared to put £5,000 in, say, for a corporate, I understand the one vote kind of thing. Where does my investment cross over the line with sponsorship? Because if I'm putting £5,000 in for a membership, I would expect something a bit more than putting £1 in. So, for example, any commercial rights, use of logos, use of that kind of stuff. Or is that forbidden under the scheme, and therefore I stray into that sponsorship arena?
No, it's a good question, and it's important to define the difference between membership, investment, and sponsorship. So, sponsorship may give individual sponsors the rights to use the logo and to actually use the collateral, the marketing collateral of the club. If we're talking about investment of the nature of £5,000, then there'll be specific investment schemes that can be developed, including community shares. So we're talking about the detail around that is important. There is not a one size fits all, and that again is one of the beauties of the Community Benefit Society model, in that it does flex. The constraints around that flexibility is the members' decisions about what is permissible in the society, rather than decisions of one or two people who might sit on the board. But I'm happy to have further discussions as this project develops about different kind of schemes that can be put in place.
Okay, thank you everyone, and thank you Andy. We look forward to more of your input in the future. But just to reiterate that all the points that you've put down and the concerns that you've put down will go to a final report that will be available to everyone, and the questions that are raised will be answered within that report. But I think now, because obviously time is pressing, I basically, before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who's helped organise this evening. I want to thank all the facilitators on the tables. I want to thank the club, and I also want to thank you for turning up and showing your interest and support to the club. You know, thank you for everyone that has contributed on the tables. I think it's very important that everybody's voice is heard. I'm going to say that all the significant comments and themes that were developed from the breakout tables will be put forward, and all the questions that have been raised tonight will be answered in that report. So look, we've had a good go at this evening. There's going to be obviously follow-up meetings in the future, but I think what we would like, and the council would like to see, so they know they're going down the right track, is maybe a show of hands in the room about the next steps that we take. And really that basically is, do you consider that the ideas that have been outlined tonight about moving towards a community-owned club are right for Frome Town Football Club? And basically, with a show of hands, can I see people that would agree with that particular proposal? That's fantastic. That looks like almost unanimous support. In fact, just for the sake of it, anybody against? No. Any abstentions? No. Fantastic. Carried. Thank you. I have. Oh yes, please fill out your details on these forms so that we can get back to you and communicate. Well, look, with the enthusiasm that's been shown tonight, it's fantastic, and hopefully people in this room with the skills and enthusiasm to make this a success will get involved, and any calls for help and requests for ideas, we will be in touch with you. So thank you very much. I hope that a few of you will stay, linger at the bar, have a chat about some of the ideas that you've heard tonight, and obviously some of the people involved are here to answer any of your questions that you may have. Okay, thank you very much and good evening.